Hello everyone, my name is Owen Gotimer. I'm the community manager at TechWell. I'm joined today by Cassandra Comar, senior consultant at Coveros. Cassandra, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Owen.
We are going to be doing we're going to be talking about an Agile Manifesto principle today, and that principle reads, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Cassandra, do you want to talk a little bit about what that principle means?
Sure. So there's a few different ways this one plays out in the real world. The first is that when we step into developing some kind of piece of software or even broader engineering efforts, it's very easy to especially following a lot of the other Agile principles, try to take this approach of let's just break down the work that we need to do, let's figure out what the next step is and just tackle that. And what I think this principle is really getting at is that we have to think about design and we have to think about what is technically correct and what is actually going to save us effort in the future, because if we don't think about some of that up front and we don't continuously do that the entire time, we're going to through a process of reflection and review, we're going to lock ourselves into corners, we're going to end up doing a lot of rework and just tons and tons of additional work that we just never had to do in the first place.
Right, so you talk about having to do the additional work and rework and putting yourself in putting your back up against the wall.
Yeah.
What are some other signs, or what are some signs you might see at your organization or with your team that they're not following through with this principle?
The biggest one is, so to some degree you're always going to see this, right? Because you can't think of everything. And if you spend all of your time doing design up front, you're going to lock yourself into another corner, which is you never actually get anything done. So you're always going to run into this to some degree. It's just a question of how much and how early you run into it. And the way you start to notice that you're running into it is because you're starting to make larger and larger decisions to take on huge chunks of work to basically fix defects in the product that you're actually building. I've seen this play out most spectacularly when there's an app, we're working on an application that has been in development for 8+ years, and all of a sudden every single decision to try and improve the product requires all of the engineering department to make any choices about anything that we're going to do, because nothing is owned by any small group or any small team, and it can't be, because everything touches everybody. Right, and that's a huge indicator that your architecture and your design have completely slipped away from you, and you have no option to actually revisit.
Right. So when you have a team that is kind of falling into these bad practices, are there some steps they can take to kind of jumpstart getting back in line with this principle?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing is try and think about if you had no constraints, where would you be? Right. If you could plan this up front now, where would you put yourself? And then you can start to think about, how can I break this down into small things that take me from where I am now to where I'm trying to get, right? And that's not always the easiest thing in the world to do, and sometimes you have to make trade-offs that aren't great, but if you start to think about it in those terms, it becomes a lot easier to break the work down into actually achievable goals. Because if we don't set achievable goals, we're just kind of spinning in random directions.
Right.